Tread. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jeff McNamee. I am the chair in the Department of Health, Human Performance and Athletics. I'm also a professor of human performance. I am very fortunate, I can't tell you how fortunate, to be part of the sport management team here at Linfield. They very kindly brought me in. Many of those members are here tonight. Thank you. They made this happen. One of those incredible members is to my left, Dr. Natalie Welch. She'll be moderating tonight's discussion. I also want to take just a quick opportunity to thank our Office of Academic Affairs, who supported the event, as well as the Atticus Hotel, who are hosting many of our guests tonight. It is my honor, and as I've gotten to know these amazing people, it truly is my honor to introduce the panelists for this evening. Jennifer Gabrielli, I first want to say welcome home, is a Linfield grad, and she's the Chief Rider Experience Officer, I want that title, at Intent Cycles. Jennifer graduated from Linfield with a BA in History and Political Science. Shortly after graduation, her plan to attend law school was derailed. Good use of the derail, that was good. When she completed her first mountain bike race in Bend, Oregon. Jen's love of the sport has guided her throughout her life and provided endless adventures, longtime friendships, a husband, and a career. Jen Gabrielli. To her left, Claire Bouchard, professional mountain bike athlete. Claire is a 12-time Canadian national team member. I'll say it again, 12-time Canadian national team member, World Championships bronze medalist, a multiple Canadian national champion. She is globally respected as an athlete in the industry and a true ambassador of mountain biking. And as a person who loves mountain biking, I can attest to it. She continues to compete at the professional level and is a certified mountain bike coach. Claire is a brand ambassador for Kavaric Racing and a graphic designer with Cro-Mag Bikes. To Claire's left, Seema Safavi Bayat. Not even, oh, sorry. Let me practice again. Seema, though. Okay. PSU student and Skate Like a Girl coach. Seema is a Pacific Northwest native who started her time with Skate Like a Girl Seattle at age 18. After moving to Portland, she continued her journey and joined Skate Like a Girl Portland. Always more interested in an individual expression of kinetics, she gravitated towards skateboarding and snowboarding to keep active, physically, mentally, and in the community. She attributes the past 6 years of teaching people of all ages, abilities, ethnicities, and gender identities how to skateboard as a catalyst to her own growth and confidence and character. Currently, Seema is finishing her BS in Environmental Science at Portland State University, along with juggling snowpack research, art and event curation, and of course, Skate Like a Girl. Charlie Kearns, whitewater paddler and journalism PhD student. Charlie is currently a doctoral candidate at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, where she also earned her bachelor's degree in journalism with a concentration in science and medical reporting. Her primary research focuses on how action sports media can help to reimagine the relationship between sports and culture. Charlie has worked in print and online journalism for over a decade. She was an online editor for the international paddling magazine Canoe and Kayak. Following her time as an editor, Charlie moved to Asheville, North Carolina, where she worked as an editor-at-large for action sports and outdoor recreation outlets. Wanda Razavadowska, I just met Wanda, head of Nike skateboard sales. Wanda describes herself as one part washed up professional athlete, one part business professional, and all-around friendly person. She has extensive experience in the business of sports, spanning from a Fortune 100 sporting goods company, top-ranked collegiate sports programs, and Olympic-level events. She is a former national team athlete in 2 sports and holds an MBA and a master's in sport administration. Originally from Canada, I've got 2 up here. She currently lives, works, and plays in Portland, Oregon. Welcome, please, our panelists.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Another round of applause for our guests, please. Some excitement. Yay. Awesome. Awesome. So we are so lucky to have you guys here. And before we dive in though, I think it's good for us because I would suspect most of us aren't maybe action sport athletes or too familiar with action sports. So I think Charlie was going to maybe provide us with a little definition, the kind of ground where we are. What is action sports?
All right, I think this is working. I see heads nodding, so I think I'm good. So, according to the literature, basic characteristics that define action sports include largely being individualistic in nature, non-organized, participant-led, so you're not quite thinking coaches, things like that, and a creative engagement with the natural space. And that doesn't necessarily mean just the environment. It means that you're not setting boundaries. You're not, for example, changing Times Square to fit skateboarding, but you're creatively navigating Times Square as it is on your skateboard. And while competitions do exist in action sports, if the competition didn't exist, the sport could still stand. You still have the ability to mountain bike. There's, of course, downhill skiing, slalom skiing, but then there's also backcountry skiing as another example. So this is not person versus person, but person with space and with place. So those are kind of like some defining characteristics of action sports.
Awesome. So I'm wondering, ladies, you wouldn't mind maybe Jen starting and talking about how you maybe got into your sport or into kind of the organization that you're working with, and what the maybe like the day-to-day looks like for you. You got it. Good.
I got into my sport, well, the way lots of my friends did. I knew someone who rode and here at Linfield, actually, and just started riding as a social outlet and met more people who rode, and then just really liked it, rode a lot, and then moved to over to Bend, and just really there's so much great riding over there. So I just couldn't stop. So I was super addicted, and that was great. But through that, I decided to try to pursue a career as a professional bike racer. So I decided to move to Southern California and pursue sponsorships, and just learned a lot about sort of marketing yourself and sort of packaging yourself as a athlete, and sort of learning what you could bring to a company rather than sort of what you want to get from a company. You really need to show them what you can offer them in return for their support. And so I sent my resume out, and I didn't get sponsored right away, but I did get a job offer. So I took the job, and I started working in the bike industry in 1996. And I've been with the same company ever since. I took about 10 years off to do my own women's retail clothing store, which was super fun, with Leigh Donovan, who Claire and I know well. She's a former world champion downhiller, so it's just, yeah. And then, so I've worked at Intense for most of my adult life. I've worked in almost every aspect of the company, and I'm currently working, it's just kind of, well, currently I'm working in dealer development in sales in Pacific US and Canada. But most recently I was working also in customer service and just sort of leading that. But I just go where I'm needed. Like I've been there so long, and I just go where I'm needed. So, but it's been great. And
Best
I haven't
job
used my
title
degree.
I think I've ever heard. Yeah.
I haven't used history or political science at all. So.
How did I get into mountain biking? Well, I think, I guess location. So I grew up in North Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada, and I think that the sport was really taking root there on the North Shore, and my older brother. So it was one of those stories. The older brother was into it, and he was like my idol. So I always wanted to do what he did, and so yeah, I just followed him into it. and fell in love with it right away. It made sense to me because I grew up ski racing, so it was very much about riding terrain and navigating terrain and navigating obstacles. So yeah, I just kind of took to it right away. And then being a competitive person, I just started competing, racing right away because I just felt like I needed that outlet. I had some fuel that I needed to express and prove something. So, so yeah, that was me.
Well, for me, I always kind of hung out with skateboarders like in my hometown, and then in high school I played like varsity lacrosse, but I didn't really like it. Like I was there, but not like mentally, like not passionately. And then I spent a lot of my time like at the end of high school just snowboarding. Um, and then I remember hanging out with skateboarders again and being like, I don't want to sit here anymore and just like watch you do this. And so I met who is now, she's the executive director of All Skate Like a Girl, Kristen Ebling. We became really good friends. And she was like, well, you know how to snowboard, you know how to skate. And so it took one day with a bunch of, and I got really lucky, I got to skate with a bunch of girls only. Like no boys anywhere. And then that's what kind of led me into skate coaching too. So skateboarding was always like, and just like socially and culturally to me was very like what I resonated with the most. That was like my tribe. And so it wasn't just the sport itself or it wasn't the activity itself, it's the music and the art and everything that came with it. So that's how I got into it. Just the one person, the one gal who kind of pulled me in and showed me that I have a space in this community. And yeah.
So I went to the University of Tennessee in undergrad as well. They have a big outdoor program, and I grew up swimming and running track competitively, and decided not to go into that in college, but I still went and swam laps, and that was how I saw there were these people in boats, like learning how to roll their kayaks and paddle around, and I thought, that's really weird. It was really weird, and I was like, I went over there and asked what it was about. They said this is how you learn safely, how to like learn the techniques of paddling so that you can get down in a river. And so I was 19 at the time, and I got in, learned how to roll, and 10 years later, I've gotten to travel around the world paddling and did my career. I'm doing my dissertation on it. So it pretty much, I would say for a lot of us, the sports that we participate in are not just, like it doesn't end when we get off the bike or out of our boat or off the skateboard. Like it stays with us in pretty much every part of our day-to-day. So that's kind of where it is for me.
Hello? Working? Press the bottom.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a rookie at this, evidently. I grew up in a small ski town in British Columbia of 4,000 people called Fernie in the Rockies just north of Montana, and there was nothing else to do but ski. That was my first introduction, one of my first introductions into sport, and the way I describe it is it was more just a feeling that I had inside of me. You mentioned the word, or you had the word creative expression. Other people use flow. There's different ways to describe it, but for me it just felt good. And then there was a moment as a teenager when I saw the '99 World Cup happen on TV, and Mia Hamm and Brandi Chastain and all those badass athletes kicking butt, and showing us all what soccer was like, and selling out stadiums, the 90,000 seat Rose Bowl stadium in the final. And that was the first moment where I realized that sport can actually be more than just a creative expression. And I don't mean just a creative expression, because that in itself is enough, but just the idea of competition and testing yourself, your own human potential, and then your team potential. And so ever since that day, it became more of a pursuit to see what I could achieve, what my team could achieve, and that's what's really got me into competitive sport.
perspectives now, but about the kind of the marketing and the sponsorship side of kind of your sport, or even just overall women in action sports.
Well, I think that it's changed so much. I mean, when I was pursuing sponsorship 20 years ago, I printed out my resume on a piece of paper, and now, you maybe get a flash drive or an email. So I think, and I think what athletes can bring, it has changed so much. It used to just be results or a personality, and now it's a social media following, and so it's changed so much, and it changes all the time. And it's harder, I think, now to get sponsorships than it was back in the day. And I think sponsors are looking for different things. Every sponsor looks for different things, but I think I think it's harder now, and I think social media plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, I agree with Jen. Like, it has changed a lot. Like, your role as an athlete has changed so much, just within like even the last like 6 years. So yeah, social media has changed being what it means to be an athlete. And there's all sorts of different athletes now. Like, before, you know, it was very much results focused, and yeah, now it's a lot more than, your name beside a time on a piece of paper. It's like, you know, like you can be seen so much, so much easier and faster, and so yeah, it's really changed, and it's a lot to navigate, really. Like, still just it's all so new, so still figuring it out.
In terms of the social media and like skateboarding for women, I brought this up this morning, of how you can have a girl who has more accessibility to skateboarding, like out in California, and then a girl in like Oklahoma who like doesn't have anything around her, doesn't have, not necessarily like a role model, and see that person and be able to connect, and then be like, if she can do it, I can do it. And so that's a cool thing about social media and skateboarding. I think the marketing side of things, in terms of brands, and even just marketing yourself as if you're female identifying, it still needs a lot of work, because a lot of times you're compromising being almost just an athlete and just letting your skateboarding speak for you to make money. And sometimes you have to compromise that with like modeling or something like that, just so, because you can't really work a 9 to 5 and still skate every day and then be super good. Where like a lot of dudes that get sponsored off of primarily just their skateboarding, and so that doesn't happen as much with women. It's happening more now, I think. Hopefully, that's what I'm seeing. But I have my own friends who were like, all right, like I'm gonna just give in and just do all this modeling stuff. Not that they don't enjoy it as well, but the fact that they have to, like, a dude doesn't have to go model to like be able to get a flight to California for a competition, where like maybe a woman has to, is a little, that sucks.
So to that point, actually, is Molly here by chance? So this is what we were talking about in the car with what I look at. So as a side note, that's irrelevant to the rest of you all. But so I would say, a little bit coming from the journalist side, or the journalism side of it, some of it's a little tricky, because now as a gatekeeper with journalism, we're not quite so useful anymore for those sponsorships. Like, athletes, as I'm sure you guys know from mainstream sports as well, like athletes can bypass journalists to make direct connections to audience members. And so that's something that we are grappling with and trying to work through. And I think some of it, while being a challenge, is also a great opportunity to kind of get off the podium and I said this in the class before, but to contribute to the conversation. Like, social media is much more, instead of just the few to the many, it's the many to the many. So figuring out ways to be able to participate in that larger conversation that your community or your culture is having, and moving it beyond just competitions. Like, what are you actually doing? What is the narrative that you're wanting to tell? What are the stories that you're wanting to be part of your culture? I think is incredibly important. And in doing that, some of it is more liberating because it used to be kind of some more hard, fast no's, I think, for a lot of women. If we didn't fit a specific like a specific narrative, like a very narrow narrative, and we're still seeing a lot of that in mainstream sports, whereas again, now we're kind of able to bypass that, and while we still have a lot of work ahead, like a lot of work ahead of us, as not even just within our sports, but as a community at large, we are widening, or we are making bigger our narrative, our story options, which I think is pretty cool.
I'll build off that social media theme, and I'm inspired personally by what social media has enabled female athletes to do. In the past, it's felt like it's been, if you know, let's take Nike as an example. If you're a Nike athlete, then the brand has been almost that conduit for you telling your story. And now social media is kind of flipping the power in some sense to enable the athlete to become their own brand and dictate the narrative that they want to put out into the world. So if you take like Megan Rapinoe as an example, you know, her being a Nike athlete is just part of her story, and she's able to use things like social media to talk more about herself and what she means in her own voice.
Well, it's like Leo Baker. Like we have, well, are they transitioned now? Or?
Yes, yeah.
So
yes,
there's
she's been on
a
public about
new
that, yeah.
trans from female to male professional skateboarder who started off as Lacey Baker, who's now Leo Baker, and with the support of Nike as well, and Meow and everything, like, and their social media presence, and using that social media presence to connect to people in real life at competitions, at whatever it may be, they were able to bring something so different to skateboarding, and almost seamlessly, like it wasn't that big of a deal. Like it was just like, cool, Lacey's Leo now, still an amazing skateboarder, still put out a great part, you know, and that's what social media can do.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm proud that I work for a brand that is contributing and telling their story in some small way, participating in that story, and to me this is new, so they.
We're changing it next year to they shred, just so everyone knows.
They shred. Great. There you go. I totally lost my train of thought after that. Yeah. Can we come back to that? Oh no. Yeah. Let's come back to it.
No, Wanda, I was wondering, so maybe more specifically, as an athlete in the kind of corporate world, how do you feel like that's, how do you, have you had to navigate that? Have you feel like you are kind of having to push back against the man, or, you know, having...
I'll answer that question, but I remembered what I was going to say, because it's actually like, it makes sense in regards to that question too. But Leo Baker transitioning from Lacey to Leo, and having a platform to do that, and being a professional skateboarder to me is like the epitome of what being authentic is. And that's my dream for the world, my dream for my kids, and I'm happy to participate in something like that, enabling that story to be told. Your question was corporate. Being a woman in corporate sports. Yeah, I mean, I think the sports system is a structure that historically has been male-led, so we're still fighting against some of that legacy structure, if you will, and we're trying to evolve, you know, in the way we approach sport, and I think Nike has the power to do that, being one of the leading brands, and what I'm seeing working there is that we are taking that seriously and looking to evolve in the spaces we can. But I'd say yes. I mean, whether you're working at Nike or any other company, there's things to work through, definitely. But I'm proud to show up to Nike every day, and feel like we're making some moves in that space.
Yeah. Awesome. And I think we had the women's lacrosse team, was that right, in the house? Yay, welcome. I know a lot of people were coming from practice, so glad you could join us. Trying to think of our audience here and the students here. Maybe they're interested, or maybe just didn't even realize this opportunity. Can you maybe speak about opportunities in this field, maybe for students?
There are a lot, especially right now. And we were talking earlier about how we've been trying to hire a position for about 6 months, and we can't seem to find somebody who is qualified with all the right tools that we're looking for. So, and there's so many different aspects of action sports. There's sales, there's marketing, there's product development, there's and then in each one of those categories, there's a million different things, right? So it's really just, and it's such a young field. It's such a new, like the position we're hiring for, we can't find somebody because those skills aren't necessarily being taught and packaged in that way. So it's just really interesting, and especially with all the technology changing so quickly all the time that people from my generation, we need young talent to lead the way in that because so you just pick what you love and pursue it because there's so many opportunities right now.
Oh, it's supposed to be green. Haha. There we go. So to that point as well, what's really fun about a lot of these action sports, and similar to mainstream sports, these are not like cookie cutter, one size fits all. They differ in a lot of ways, but one of the similarities that I would say they share is you don't have to stop when you turn like 22. These are lifelong lifestyle sports that you can participate in. And so when you're helping marketing or when you're helping with different aspects of the job, a lot of it is you're bringing on what you did maybe that day. You're bringing on what you did earlier that week or what have you into your ideas and into your skill set. So I worked for Canoe and Kayak magazine. I'm still editor at large for several different publications, and these are things that I actively go out and do physically as a whitewater paddler, or in some instances in mountain biking and whatnot to get the story. So having those skill sets, this is not something that once you hit your mid-20s, you're done. Like you can actually go and pick up mountain biking or learn how to skateboard or learn how to whitewater paddle, and from that passion develop a career, like develop these types of, like go into these arenas and find these jobs that currently can't be filled or struggling to fill right now. So that's, I don't know, when I started sports, like when I was a kid and whatnot, thinking, okay, I only have, now granted, we also thought I was going to get a lot taller, so with swimming, I have until I'm 21 and then I'm done. Like there isn't like that age limit in these other sports. So that also in itself is pretty cool.
I'll add to that. I like what you were saying in terms of like finding your passion and find a job aligned to it. I think that equally can be like find your passion, find your why. I don't know if anybody's heard of Simon Sinek. If you haven't, look him up. He has a very tactical approach to finding your why, and that might be actually working in the sport you do, or maybe it's, my example is my why is helping to create opportunities for the next generation in sport. So that's a little bit of a broader approach. I work in skateboarding, but I don't skate. I grew up playing soccer and skiing. But it all falls under that umbrella of helping to create new opportunities for the next generation in sport. So do the work to find out what kind of makes your heart sing, and then just get out there and take any opportunity you can get. Spend the first few years of your career just trying different things. There's so many opportunities in sport. There's corporate, there's brand, there's humanitarian organizations, there's media, there's college sports. There's a ton of opportunities out there. Just say yes, go do it. You can always change it, and you'll learn more about yourself along the way.
Awesome. Yeah. And I want our audience, we're going to open it up to questions here shortly. So get your questions ready. And if you're watching us on the live stream on YouTube, we'll be looking out on the comments if you want to ask a question. But thinking about creating opportunities, Seema, I was wondering, can you maybe for people who aren't familiar with Skate Like a Girl, just maybe talk about what the organization is about.
Cool. So Skate Like a Girl is a nonprofit. It started in Seattle over 10 years ago. And that's where I started as well. We have our Portland chapter, which was pretty dormant for the past, until 3 years ago, it was pretty dormant. We just didn't have the right support. And then there's also an SF Bay chapter as well. So there's 3 chapters on the West Coast, and there's a plethora of other like girls skateboarding organizations throughout the U.S. Mainly what we focus on is youth programming, and that is co-ed as well, but also creating inclusive spaces for like all genders, all abilities, all like just the most inclusive space that we can in terms of skateboarding. So that comes in the form, in Portland we have 3 times a month we have women's and trans clinics. So we hold them, one at the Nike skate park and then 2 nights at Commonwealth in Portland. And we have an allyship session too, which is a conversation starter. So we invite like the Portland skateboard community, whether you're a parent of a skateboarder or you're just a spectator, I guess, or someone who follows skateboarding, or anyone really who feels like they have a say, and it's like a really safe space to like talk about what how community members can make skateboarding a more inclusive space. But yeah, that's what we do. It's basically
Awesome.
is a lot of just
Awesome.
programming, like lately in Portland, which is really cool, is that our crew in Portland is basically made up of 5 people, including me. Where in Seattle, there's an executive director, 2 co-directors, a ton of youth volunteers, they're just a little more established, but Portland's so unique and that it's just the 5 of us. And so what I've noticed lately is we've been taking a lot of community feedback, and so we're like, what does our city need? How can we cater to our city? So, yeah.
Awesome. I was just trying to integrate a little sponsored content, so we could get some, get the shout out for Skate Like a Girl. I'm wondering maybe if you guys could talk about some challenges you faced in your career, either as a professional or as a, or as on the athlete side or on the professional, business side.
As just like a woman in action sports, man, it wasn't, I mean, like many sports, it's male dominated. It started as, the roots started off with dudes, especially in skateboard. I can speak to skateboarding and snowboarding. So it's kind of scary, but what's really cool about women's skateboarding is the way I talk about it is it's not like women just started skating out of nowhere. It's just like women's skateboarding is its own thing. Like that's how unique it is, and that's how amazing it's like completely its own thing. It's not like we kind of took what the guys were doing and kind of tweaked it. It's just such a different community. And so that in itself is also a challenge because even at like the X Games for skateboarding or even snowboarding, the cash purses are not the same, even though the women and the males are riding the exact same insane course. You're getting less money at the end just because that's how institutionalized it is. So that's like just becoming a professional as a woman is harder, I think, in general. Getting to that point.
So paddling, I mean, we're the redneck cousins of the rest of action sports. So like, you mentioned cash purse. I'm like, oh, that sounds really nice. So so some of what makes whitewater paddling interesting, there are 2 elements to it. One is it's, for the most part, it's a sport that you have to have other people with. Like, there is something called solo paddling, but it's not done very often, and it's done by a very select group of people. But for the most part, because your foundation is moving, like you might want to stop paddling, but your ground is constantly going. You're on the river. if something bad happens, it gets really bad really fast. I've lost friends to paddling. I have tried to save a friend and couldn't. Like it's a very real sport in that way. And so I think that very nature kind of blurs that gender divide a little bit, because if you're getting your shit handled on a river and you're swimming and like no one's gonna care, you're not gonna care if it's a man or a woman throwing you a rope saving your life. Like that happens very fast. I've had that happen to me, I've done it to friends, so there's that. And then on that same token, when you start to paddle, you will swim, it will basically be a pool, and you will freak out. Your boat will be somewhere downstream, your gear will be all over the place, and you have to have friends who help you. So it's an incredibly humbling experience at the beginning too. And then finally, it's because we rely on a river, which for the most part, with the exception of course, the Olympics with slalom, like it's one of the harder spaces to control and to conform. Like you're not creating whole new rivers or something, like you're kind of dealing with the cards that you're dealt. It's a lot harder to make mainstream in that way, I guess. So we're not quite, I guess like the challenges of that space dictate our lives a little bit more than the institutional challenges and like cultural challenges that we face as women paddlers. Sorry, real talk there.
No, and go ahead, Claire.
I was just gonna say, like, I think that for me, in my situation, I guess I've never really been too motivated by money, and I guess that's a lucky thing, because I probably wouldn't have made it very far in mountain biking. But yeah, it's you don't, I don't know, like you don't really enter these sports thinking you're gonna make, like action sports, thinking you're gonna make a ton of money. So and yeah, for sure, there's a lot of obstacles. There's a lot of situations where I've definitely had to work twice as hard to get half as far as my, male friends. But there's also opportunity, because if there's not as many women, it's a little easier to stand out at the same time. So there's definitely pros and cons, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the money part, because I was thinking, because most of our students, you're probably, you're on your ramen noodles and you're, number crunching on like, I got to make money. Like, when am I going to start making money? But and it really is true when you love what you do. Like, you're not working a day in your life, and you really, the money doesn't matter. You make it work. Jen, I want to let you talk a little bit more about Tent Cycles and kind of the evolution that business has kind of taken, and maybe any challenges aside from trying to find someone to employ. Guys, if you need a job.
Well, so my husband actually founded our company in 1996. He incorporated, but he started making bikes in, I don't know, the late 80s. And it's been crazy, because we went from a manufacturer where we made everything in-house in Southern California. We made all of our bikes in the U.S., here in the U.S., and they were made out of aluminum. But then the shift, kind of like, if you remember, when everything was steel, and then the shift from steel to aluminum. So everybody in the industry started making carbon fiber bikes. Well, there's really no viable carbon fiber manufacturing in the U.S. for bicycles that's affordable. They've been doing it in Asia forever, and they're really good at it. So we moved our manufacturing overseas, and that was really hard for a bunch of us who had been there for a long time, because we went from making stuff, and we still make stuff. It's just different now. So it's interesting, and then of course your personnel changes, like your needs change as a company. The roles within the company change. You need to change. You need to hire some different staff and maybe eliminate other staff. So it's been a long, strange trip.
One more, then I'll let the audience ask some questions. I was wondering if maybe somebody could elaborate on, heard the Olympics mentioned a couple times, kind of what the kind of future now with the Olympics and maybe the action sports becoming more mainstream and what maybe we can expect to see there, maybe?
You guys just both looked at me.
Oh,
Anyone?
well.
For the audience, they may not even know, so.
So as far as mountain biking goes, the Olympic discipline is cross country, and so for me, being a downhiller, so I race point to point as fast as I can against the clock. We were never, it's never an Olympic sport because you would need a venue with a proper mountain, and that's just not going to happen everywhere. Like London, how would they host a downhill event that's worthy of the, But so for me, there was zero funding for, like next to zero funding for downhill athletes. So yeah, all the funding went to the Olympic side of the sport, and I think like we had to pay our way. We had to pay for our jerseys, so we had to pay to wear our Canadian national team jerseys. And I think the only time that I got a free flight was after I won my country a medal at the World Championships. So I think that it'll change a lot for action sports becoming Olympic.
Which point are you wanting me to make?
But it makes it like more accessible.
You can.
I can add, skateboarding is in the Olympics for the first time this summer in Tokyo in 2020, both men's and women's. What I'm personally most excited about, because the industry has like two ends of the spectrum in terms of how they feel about skateboarding being in the Olympics. You know, the term creative expression again that was brought up earlier. Many people think that it's going to ruin the sport in some way because we're moving further away from that, more towards like structured and organized competition. But personally, I feel inspired by the platform it's going to give many athletes who currently don't have the platform to share the sport that they love in skateboarding, and especially on the female side, we have there's some amazing athletes that will be competing in the Olympic Games, including two 11-year-olds, one called Raisa from Brazil and one called Sky Brown, who's she's going to compete for Great Britain. So that's what I'm looking forward to is seeing these amazing athletes on the Olympic stage, and the girls and the boys that are watching and looking on TV or there in person and saying like, holy shit, I want to do that. So I can't wait to see how many new skateboarders we have, 6 months from now.
Well, I think in terms of like, I definitely have been on the both ends of like that conversation with like my friends, and it's like a lot of purism in skateboarding, but you might as well just like look at it and take advantage of it. So if there's that Olympic platform, then you're able to be like, I mean, if you're really thinking about the money aspect of it, how can the industry, at least for women, like how can you, it's almost like the platform to be able to just be like, I can let my skateboarding speak for me instead of anything else as a female in skateboarding. But again, the industry is just going to get better. I mean, at the end of the day, even with nonprofit work, you can never not talk about money. Like the only way we can serve our community is if we make money some way. And it's cool in nonprofit work because you can make it more unique to your community. So we can offer something or have an event and raise money that way. But you can never stray away from the talk of money. And so I think in terms of the Olympics, it's going to help the industry keep alive, basically. So
I think with some of it too, while there is excitement to be had with the inclusion of these sports, sport climbing and surfing being the other two action sports, I think it's also a time to remain pretty vigilant. So when we take these sports that have those kind of blurred boundaries between or among the genders, they're not institutionalized, and we institutionalize them and we say, okay, women's events firmly camped over here, men's events firmly camped over here, and more importantly, we're going to produce in the media this image that they are different, that these athletes are different. Industries and companies may not be doing that and are very cognizant of it, I would say, from the, like NBC side, things like that. We are repackaging into mainstream ideology. And so that's something that we have to be very careful about, that we're not, and I don't even mean to say like taking away these cultures, but taking away the potential for progress. Like that's an opportunity that these sports offer with that platform. And we want to make sure that that doesn't go away for the bottom dollar.
Awesome. I think we're ready for some audience questions.
What do you got?
Yeah.
I did quit. I'm old and washed up. Unlike these amazing athletes here.
Many times.
Sorry, we want to make sure our audience watching can hear everything too.
Yeah, you went straight for the jugular with
Yeah.
that question. Snap.
I was waiting for the worst injury question. That was what I was waiting for.
Many times I have thought, this is it, that's it, I'm done. And mostly it's been, traveling all the way to Europe as a privateer and getting a front flat in my race run, or, getting sick, or, traveling all that way and then having it come crashing down on you. Or, big crashes and big injuries. There's been a lot of those for sure, and you got to pick yourself back up. But usually, there's always that thought of, "Am I done? Like should I call it now?" But then miraculously, the next day you're like, "Yeah, I'm stoked. I can't wait. Like I'm ready to heal and get back out there." So yeah.
I was just telling Claire this morning, I cracked my tailbone in a race in in the 90s, and it still hurts.
She's like, "Claire, it hurts."
It still hurts. I probably should have quit before then.
Yeah, for me, I've lost several people, and it'll be 2 years ago in May, I lost a really, really good friend. And I've lost a couple of good friends, but this one was like, I don't know if any of you guys have had that, where it was just like that asshole shouldn't have died. Like, what just happened? And we can rationalize what happens, but they're higher risk sports. And I was very careful about, if you guys noted, I don't know if anybody noted when I was including the definition or like the characteristics, that I left risk out, because it is a much longer conversation than this panel can provide on the relationship with risk for these sports. So, but that's one. And then next day you wake up and it's like, for whatever reason, I'm ready to get back out there and I'm gonna go do this with maybe a little bit more of an understanding.
Yeah, I think that's like the uniqueness of action sports, is that we're all a little crazy, and same with like same with like I don't want to say normal, like not like normal sports. It's so special, but well, it is risky. I mean, I've lost so many friends. Last summer I had a friend get like an insane TBI, but the crazy thing about and I can just speak to skateboarding and snowboarding, is like, we have a friend pass away and we're like, what did they want to do the most if they were still here? Skate. So we're gonna go skate for them. So that's like kind of the crazy part of action sports. It's I may quit skateboarding, like actually being on a board in the next, I don't know, 5 years. But you're always part of that community. I think the community aspect of action sports, whether like whatever town you're in, even internationally, like I've probably never have paid for a hotel room when I'm traveling, because a skater knows a skater who has a nice couch, and I'm like, cool, I'm still in college, give me that couch, please. So in terms of I think for me, like I when my friend got that TBI, I was like, why am I around these risky people? Why am I around these people who are like, I have so many friends that are passing away all the time because of this culture and because of this sport. Like, I should stray away from it. But that's your tribe, At the end of the day, like,
yeah, I'm gonna be like 70. I'm like, yeah, remember that one time into SF? Like, so.
We can always couch surf. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, hopefully by then I don't have to.
It's funny too because I feel like not just as a sport but also as a profession that like I've talked to so many people just in the last month that have left the bike industry to pursue careers in other industries and they always come back. Yeah. So we kind of like it's kind of like the joke, right? The
cat
Godfather?
came back.
Right? Like you try, but it's in your like it's a part of you. Like you can't. There's no escape.
I would say some of the comparison might be if you guys have like a favorite sport team or like football team, kind of like that fanship, that camaraderie that you feel not just with that team but with other people who also love that team. You get to follow them, you understand them, things like that. Like we express, I mean, and we consume as well, like we are on social media and things like that, but a lot of the way that we express our fanship is through participation. And in that way we build that community and those couches that we surf across the country and whatnot, but yeah. All right, maybe an easier question? No, I'm kidding. You got raise it.
Top two, Jeff. Next, maybe. We'll come up.
I wanted to jump back to something you guys were talking about. When you get injured doing your action sport, like how do you overcome that fear that is associated with doing that? Do you have any like tips for that, or
I'm still
is it just kind of
terrified.
I
wing
get
it?
asked this question so much from women when I teach them, or when we have like women-specific clinics and things like that. It's a tough one. I think after an injury, it's baby steps, and you just you got to take baby steps and gain your confidence back, and start small, and before you know it, like you've forgotten how much you hurt yourself, and then it happens again. No, but yeah, it's all about taking small steps.
I think making
Taking
sure.
your time.
Oh, sorry. I think making sure that you don't let that memory become bigger than the incident. So, I mean, a lot of times you're in that space where you've been doing the sport and you got injured and there were other memories associated with that space. Don't forget that those are there. Remember those, feel those happy feelings, kind of shrink that amygdala in your brain a little bit. Don't let it get too large. And use that to kind of fuel those moments of like building those baby steps and whatnot.
And you can use visualization, or if you've done it before, you can do it again, kind of thing. So yeah, positive reinforcement.
All right, I think we're ready up top.
Okay, our coach asked us this question today at practice, and we kind of had some struggles with it, so I wanted to hear what your guys' answers were. But like going into a field where it's not like traditionally like run by women, and you guys are kind of like breaking ground, what's like your entourage that you say to yourself like before big situations where you're like you have to like calm your nerves and you have to like get ready mentally and like get yourself in the moment? Like what's that message that you guys say to yourselves?
I don't know if mine's PC enough. So. I'm just going to go there.
Do we have bleep capability?
Wow. I know, you guys get so giddy over curse words. No, I mean, it's just a lot of like, fuck yeah, I'm doing what I love doing. Like, I'm so stoked. Yeah, and I don't know, saying that for some reason is fun.
I think
I don't really have any.
One of my trainers had me do a bit of sport psych, and had me kind of create some keywords. So for me, when I'm racing point to point, and if I make a mistake, I use like a keyword to warp back into focus. So it is different for everyone. So I have my own personal kind of thing that makes me just focus like an arrow, like warp me back into. So it's really like a personal thing. You can use any power however words you want. But I would often say it right in the start gate, and then if there's like a big jump coming up on track that I need to really focus for, I'd say it there in my head, like multiple times down the track. But yeah, I think it's important. That's a good point, because I think you could create that for yourself, whatever it is for you that'll ground you and like get you back into that. I always kind of say like sharp as an arrow kind of really works for me, just like eagle eye focus.
Anyone? I got another question.
I was waiting for it to turn green, guys. Leave me alone. What do you guys do to take care of like your mental health?
Not all at once.
I think
Man, you guys are not
would it be
letting up.
balance? I think just finding your balance. I think in any sport, whether it be like traditional or action sport, it's such a loaded question. That you can get burnt out really easily on it. Whether it be this like doing the sport itself, being around the people all the time, right? So like for my example is like for years I was only around skateboarders. That's like I chose to just be around people who skated. I only skated. My trips were about skateboarding, and then like 2 years ago I got burnt out and didn't even want to touch a skateboard. So it's important to be okay with like, for my mental health in terms of skateboarding and snowboarding, I pursue other things. I pursue other friends. Sometimes even with snowboarding, when I'm having a bad day in like the backcountry, I go take a lift on my own, and I just kind of try to remind myself why I'm there, and remind myself that if I don't want to be there anymore, that's okay too. Like that's the cool thing about action sports and individual sports. It's about your own challenges with that sport and your own level that you want to go up to. So if you want to be the best, you can be the best. If you just enjoy it and just want to learn, like as a coach of skateboarding, I'm like, hey, like you just learned how to skate in an hour. What's your next goal for the next time? That's between you and yourself, you know, and if you don't achieve it, like no one else is going to really care about that, in the sense of like we're going to care enough to like help you get there, but that doesn't mean you love the sport any more or less. So I think that's for me.
I think setting goals helps your mental health, I think, because it kind of, gives you a good framework for where you want to be. You don't feel confused. And then also, like putting your bike, like I had to put my bike away for a while in the winter and just take a break and do different activities just to balance out. It's also good for your body, to use different muscles and be in a different posture and position. And then also for me, a big thing is food, eating well and taking care of your body and your brain through, nutrition.
Well, I think well, I think with kind of going back to what I was saying too, is you sometimes in any sport you have such an you identify with that sport so much and it becomes your identity sometimes. So like I said, it's like that balance aspect. It's like just because I'm a skateboarder doesn't mean I can't also pursue this, that, or that. And sometimes letting go of that identity, especially when you're a bit younger and like that's all you've known or that's all people know of you, like it's almost like that whole like don't really care what other people think because you're the one going to bed with like your decisions in a sense, and those people that are real and those people that are real help your mental health along with you and really have your back, they don't care as long as you're good.
I think also to that point, go to therapy. I like, in all honesty, so not just, I'm not saying like you go to therapy, but you guys started.
Especially now when you guys are in school and you can get it for free.
What? Yeah, go. No, but for real, so, and I'm not even speaking just within action sports and mental health. Like I came into action sports with a full-on mainstream athlete mentality. Like it's like everything I did was put in hours, doing something when we're talking about play and creative expression, like I viewed everything I did as a performance. And while that is helpful on the field, being able to turn that off when you leave is it's helpful, it's healthy. You are much bigger than your sport, you're much bigger than your school, you're much bigger than, like, you are a whole person. There's no one else in this, like on this planet before, during, or after you that will be you. So being able to think beyond that, which may come not just by doing all these different sports, but like having, and I did sports therapy as well, but for me specifically, it was doing like regular therapy with the thought and building, like working to build an identity that was like unique and wholly just me as Charlie. So if that's something that you may need for mental health, like that's great. And of course you can do any of the other smaller things, but like just being willing to have an open and honest conversation with what you need for yourself.
The identity, I'm going to piggyback off what Seema said about identity. 15 years ago, I was in your guys' seat up there, playing college soccer. And there's going to be a point in your life. First of all, I hope you're lacrosse, yeah? Lacrosse. I hope you are all gunning to play till you're old and gray, and you won't ever stop playing. But at some point, there'll be a transition moment where you go from competitive college level athlete to where it just kind of becomes more recreational and for fun and fit. And that transition from a self-identity standpoint will be one of the hardest things to progress through, because you've spent your whole life identifying as a lacrosse player. So start now kind of widening your aperture in terms of your self-identity, how you define yourself. You're a lacrosse player, but you're also a great friend, an academic, maybe you're a musician, an artist. You could probably list out 15, 20, 30 things of how you self-identify, and just don't forget that you're more than a lacrosse player. And so when you have a crappy practice or you don't show up as well for your team on game day, it's just an aspect of your life. It's not everything about your life. And second to that, I'd say just be kind to yourself. Check in with yourself every day on what success looks like for you today and that day. Sometimes it'll be like just getting your butt to practice on time. Other times it'll be being the best player on the field that day and bringing your whole team along with you. But it's not going to be that every day, and just define what success looks like.
Jen, were you maybe thinking of adding on? I thought you might have.
I really like what you said just now about the transition. Claire and I were just talking about that. We know a lot of mountain bikers who reached a certain level of success, and it's not sustainable. Like no one can stay at the top of their game indefinitely. And it's really important to have a plan for when that's over, because it will end. And I've seen it work where, people, it's always hard, but I've seen it work where people transition beautifully and they're successful in the next thing they choose. And I've seen it where people fall apart, and it's hard to see that. So that's super important.
And I think we can, you see it in everyday life too, with just, I'm sure Wanda can speak to that too in the corporate world at places like Nike, where it's so competitive, even in the workplace. Like being able to have those kind of tools and just knowing yourself no matter what, I think is just great advice, no matter what you end up doing in life. But do we have another question? Awesome.
First of all, thanks guys for being here. I appreciate it. So my question is kind of going back to that question we initially had about challenges in your guys' fields. So kind of in my experience in kind of a really male-saturated, fitness, strength and conditioning world, I have, my opinions and my credentials and my experience that I feel, gives me a really good platform to, speak and make decisions and, execute and be heard. But my challenge sometimes is that as a woman, that doesn't always come off as me being a leader. It comes off as me, wanting to be heard and just to say my thing, and it's not really met with a lot of respect, whereas sometimes your male counterparts will, it's automatic, it's guaranteed that what they're saying is, what will be done. So any advice on how to, as I can tell you guys are all very strong women, so, how do you speak your piece and, kind of navigate those waters?
Well, for me, with my cohorts in skateboarding and my friends is no one likes to, like, if they're not listening, or what if maybe if someone makes like a dude makes a snarky comment or has to me, instead of being really defensive, which like I want to be like, why would you say that, like da da da, or like yell at them. No one likes to be yelled at. No one's gonna listen when you're being combative, and so you don't really know people's backgrounds, and you don't know why maybe they're reacting to you that way or not listening to you. So sometimes when I say talking to them on their level, doesn't mean like acting like they are, but trying to be a little more understanding. I think for me in skateboarding, it's helped to, in skateboarding in general, I don't know about any other, society in general, but especially in skateboarding, a lot of my male counterparts, the reason why they skate is because they don't have to talk to anyone. You know, sports didn't work for them. They don't like school. They suppress a lot of their own emotions. And so when someone who's like a girl and like kind of friendly, they're going to be really combative at first, but when you give someone the time to maybe explain themselves to you, and then you explain to them as much as you can how that made you feel, and if they don't respond to that, that's on them. Like you're not there to teach them empathy, and you're not there to do that. And so for me, it's just been trying to be on their level in that sense and try to gain understanding of why they're treating me that way. That's helped a lot, and I've noticed that, yeah, it's helped for me. I don't know.
I think in my experience, I mean, I don't know, this happened to me so many times in different situations, and you know, like I used to work at a bike shop, and we'd have customers come in, and they'd just walk right by me and go straight to the dude in the back, and the guy would say, you know, he was my friend in the back, and he'd say, well, go ask Claire. And so having, you know, surrounding yourself with friends who got your back kind of can help, and also just, you know, and I think, like, I don't know what it's like for a guy, but just, you know, for me, like, yeah, I think, well, you know, like if I compare myself to my husband, okay, well, he's stronger than me, for sure. He's a dude, right? Like he's got stronger arms than me, physically stronger than me, but I'm smarter than him. I'm more business, like
You heard
I
it
have
here
more
first,
business
everyone.
sense. You know what I mean? Like I have all these other things that can be better. Like, so I'm more well-rounded. And I think as a woman, you have to be that way in this industry. You can't just be strong physically. You have to be smart. You have to be, you know, you have to be strong, mentally tough. And so I guess, yeah, kind of, you know, building yourself up as a well-rounded human being and business person and athlete, and then having people that you respect you in your corner.
And also, talking with Seema, if this is like in a work environment, I've definitely handled it poorly in the past. But like having a one-on-one frank conversation with your boss and working to build allyship in the office space is really important. Like that was something that's hard, especially because again, it's like you want to just be able to do your job, and we're just not there yet. By and large, we're making great strides. Some businesses are making better strides than others, things like that. But I don't think that in a lot of ways it's because men are behind closed doors thinking like, how can we like burn the world today or anything like that. A lot of it is just, this is your opportunity to teach and their opportunity to learn. And I have found a lot of times it's been met positively. So just be willing to do that. But like having that, hey, I need to eat, like, we need to talk, dude. I mean, not dude, but like, we need to talk. And having a frank conversation with them and building that allyship in the workplace.
Yeah, it's the day-to-day interactions and like those small things. Because sometimes I think even in like, I'm not like a female athlete, but in the skateboarding world or even like the nonprofit world the nonprofit I work for, where we're trying to create such big change, we're like, we want to create change that just touches everyone, but that's such a big audience and big world, where as an individual you have a lot more effect on, I have a lot more effect just speaking to you today
than I would if I were to get really frustrated and maybe, honestly, maybe even rant on social media, right? Because that's so temporary. Like, I can be mad and maybe some people will read it and some people will reply like, yeah, but then they'll forget about it. But it's like that day to day, giving that person who's maybe having a bad day or they're acting a certain way all the time some space, or acting kindly towards them, as if you were gonna act kindly towards yourself. It's just, yeah, it's that day to day interactions. Like, think about your world. Like, you can affect your world a lot more, and then that world, those people will affect other people, and you'll notice like in skateboarding, it's like at the skate park when I have little 5-year-old girls that are skating with me, and then like my tattooed friends that are like rolling through listening to Sabbath, and they're like so sweet and kind because they understand. It's that day-to-day interaction I had with them skating, or having the camp there every morning, and they get it, like, oh, these girls really want to shred. That's so cool. Instead of being like, oh, they're in my way, like my morning sesh before work. You know, it's like, it's that day-to-day thing for me, yeah.
One of my mentors said to me one day, the burden for diversity is on the diverse, which is an interesting statement, and it can feel exhausting because you can ask yourself, why do I always have to be the one to speak up? But don't stop. Progress is being made every conversation, and to the guys in the room, I would say take the opportunity when you witness something to speak up as well.
We have a question from YouTube.
Oh, awesome. Hello, YouTuber.
Do you feel your fan base is more male or female centric, or is it balanced? Why do you think that is? For those of you who have fans.
I have 0 fan base, so I'll pass this one over to the ladies who do
I'm a fan of all of you, just so you know. So.
Well, my dad's a man, and he's, I think, my only fan. So maybe my husband.
But that's a cool question because that's changed. So I think, like growing up, as a kid, you don't really have that, like those societal judgments yet. You're just like, oh yeah, I'm a kid on the street. It doesn't matter if you're with the boys or not. And then you start getting, as you get a bit older, go through school, you start getting segregated a little bit, and funneled, and it's confusing. And then, but I think it was just 4 years ago at Crankworks. Fox had one of my big sponsors. They have an autograph session, and they have a bunch of rad women and men sit down, and they have a lineup of people waiting to get your poster. And I think that's kind of when I realized that there was a bunch of 7-year-old boys lining up to get the girls' posters, and that's it's kind of cool because I think that's kind of starting to happen now. Rad moms and dads are teaching their kids that women are just as valuable and admirable in sport. So it's I think it's becoming more of a mix, and I think for female athletes in action sports, I definitely think there's a lot of women, obviously, and young girls looking up to you, but a lot of your fans are guys, and they're really interested.
Well, I mean, Nora Vasilinos she's had a pro model shoe for a couple years, and I've seen more boys wear her shoe than girls. So that just says something. They were super excited that Nora had a shoe, and it's a purple shoe, it's a purple slip-on, and that's really cool. And I mean, on my realm as a coach, it's pretty cool that I'm teaching a little boy how to skate. They can say my skateboard instructor was a chick, which is cool, just because that's never really happened before.
I think it's becoming more normal to have.
And you don't even think about it. I'm bringing that up now for that question, but no one, even in mountain biking, I feel or snowboarding or something, there's, because it's such a personal sport that sometimes it's not like my brother who's a dude taught me. It's just
that's just the person who was there for me that did it, you know, or like for you, your brother got you into it, yeah.
For sure.
So even for me, it's like I'm not like I'm a girl skateboard coach and I taught a little boy. And it's cool, but like that little boy's not gonna remember. He's gonna be like, my coach Seema taught me how to kick turn. Cool, like now I'm better than her.
Well, I think that also brings up a point of like how it's important to not segregate, like have too many women-specific things. Like there's definitely value in having women-specific clinics and events and things like that. But I think, you know, by kind of like there's definitely a line that you can cross, and then you become more segregated and like more like less equal because
You become polarizing.
yeah, right. So I think like sometimes it's a little bit too much, and the tone is very much like, you know, we're women and we're special, and I just feel like why do I need something special to ride my bike? I don't. Like why do I need to feel more special than that guy to go and ride my bike? I don't. I just have to go and ride my bike. Like, so I think it's cool when, you know, like for example, in that case, to have the women and the men having their posters, signing their posters together. So like I'm sitting beside Brett Reeder, who is an absolute legend, and the 7-year-old boy doesn't know the difference. He wants my autograph too. So yeah, so it's kind of cool that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we had one question down front. Maybe we'll maybe make this the last question, and then if anybody wants to come down and say hi, personal, and introduce themselves, they can come say hi.
Hello. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. My question is, who are some of your guys' biggest inspirations?
Oh.
So, non-athlete, I would say her pen name is actually Nellie Bly. I was a person that I read when I was a kid, and she was a journalist who actually went into like an asylum, like a women's asylum, to uncover and make known to the rest of the world just how deplorable the conditions were for women and how many of them were not actually clinically insane. And like it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage for her to do that. And I just remember thinking how powerful it was that she did stand up for what she believed in, so much so that she got herself committed and went through the rounds and did all of that. So it kind of made, it also I think I was like 10 when I read the book and was just like, okay, anything else that I do will be pretty chill compared to this. So I know that that was not an athlete, which is what you were expecting, but that I just remember that always stuck out to me, where it's like if this person can do something for all these other people, then I can go run this rapid just like for myself as a small thing.
I think that it's important, like I think I look up to men and women. I think it's important not to just, don't rip yourself off, like, and that doesn't have to be somebody that's, you know, of course we all look up to people that have made big accomplishments and done great things, but there's just regular people every day around you that you can get inspiration from. You can get inspiration from, you know, that 70-year-old lady that's crossing the road, or you know, all of you ladies up here, you know, Natalie teaching a class. Like, I think it's all around you. You really, it doesn't have to be a hero, you know.
For me, I think my inspiration is whenever I'm at a clinic, and it's either the 5-year-old who just learned how to be on her board by herself, and I've had a little girl, she just cried the entire time because she missed her dad, but I'm like, just skate, and you can cry and skate, and she did it, and she was just learning, and she's like bawling and crying and, you know, having a good time and crying, and I'm like, yeah, I like this. But also, and then the mom, the 52-year-old mom I also taught how to kick turn, who's like, wow, I didn't think I could do that. And I'm like, of course you can. It takes time, but you got it. And so for me, in terms of like sticking to skateboarding and this, like my nonprofit, what inspires me or does, even when I'm so tired because I have a million other things to do, is just like, someone lands something and I'm so loud. I'm just like, yeah, like, you know. And so it's like those little things, or like knowing someone who's had a goal and they got it finally, or you know. And it could be anybody. I think for me personally, it's those people, because then it reminds me, I'm like, you're a human, I'm human, I can do that too. You know, I inspire to do, like, you inspire each other. So don't meet your idols. I'm just kidding.
My current inspiration is my daughter Ryan, and I feel bad just bringing her up because I have two other kids, but they're sleeping and not watching, so it's all good. But the reason I bring her up is because she's 3-4. She just turned 4, and I don't know if anyone's read the book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. Anyone read it? Oh yeah. Yeah. And her headline, her message is like, the age of 3 is one of the last moments, you know, before you get out into the world. You go to preschool and you're kind of like in society, which can suck sometimes, right? And it can be the reason why many of us are living below our potential, because you get rid of this growth mindset that you're actually born with. And my daughter's at that age right now where like literally anything is possible. And there was this moment where we're on the ski hill. She's 4 and can rip on her own, like a good Canadian. But we're still on the bunny hill only. And she pointed up to the high-speed quad, which was, you know, she could see it from where she was standing, and she was like, Mama, I want to go on that chairlifter. That's what she calls it, the chairlifter. And I responded like almost in reflex, like, yeah, probably not this season. Like, it takes you up top of Mount Hood. It's Vista for anyone who's skied Mount Hood. And I kind of stepped back after, and I was like, why did I say that to her? You know, like, she just has this desire to go on that chairlift. Like, let's find a way to make it happen. And that little rascal, by the end of the season, we went on Vista together. It was like a thigh burner for me because I was holding her between my legs most of the time. But she's my inspiration because daily I get reminders from her, like, why not? Just let's do it. Find a way.
Well, I thank you, ladies. You guys are all just an inspiration and so awesome, and it's just been so great spending the day with you, and encourage anyone who wants to come down and introduce themselves and make some connections. Let's give them a round of applause. And we just announced last week that we're going to become Linfield University, and I think this is like our kind of a good first event to kind of kick that off. So great job, and yeah, thanks everybody for coming out, and